Hello, and welcome to another week at the bungalow. So this week, as you can tell from the title, parapet capping. So we require this around, well, quite a lot of the flat roofing areas. As you can see on this top flat roof, we've got the timber edging that you saw us doing before, and also the concrete board on the outside. On top of that, we've obviously got the breathable membrane, but what we needed was something to give it its proper water tightness and seal it up for good. So we went for aluminium capping rather than anything else. I mean, it could have been leaded, could have been all sorts, but we've gone for an aluminium. It's got a decent life expectancy. You can get different widths to suit your purposes. You can get the elbows and T-shaped pieces as long as straights and ends and where it meets up with abutments. We'll stick a link in the description below to the website we bought it from. So there's a process to fitting it. If you've got any cavities or gaps, you have to make sure that you covered that with something like an 18mm OSB or ply. They then want a breathable membrane on the top. So as far as our top roof is concerned, we were fine because it's a solid piece of timber. So we just put the breathable membrane over the top, and then you have these, as you can see here, these like U-shaped clips with a neoprene seal that get fixed down. You got the corner one there that I'm putting on at the moment, and that holds the edge, and then you just snap over the top the sort of U-shaped sections, and that's it. So as long as your brackets to begin with are in the correct place, it's absolutely fine. So the nice long straight sections come in 3 metre lengths. They come with a couple of the clips included. So I bought a few extras for sort of doing joints and cuts and all the rest of it. And these just get screwed down. So it's relatively easy. The problem occurs if you do need to take it back up, because they fit incredibly well. We had one occasion when we had to take one back out because it wasn't on quite right, and I think the aluminium bracket underneath got bent out of shape. But to be honest, it goes on quite nicely as long as you get the gap in between. So you have to have a small sort of 2-3mm gap between the panels for a bit of expansion, and they sit quite happily. The neoprene works really well to seal up the gaps, and they sit on nice and flat, and it just trims it up nicely. And with 2 of us on the case, progress was pretty swift. Like I say, you just have to be sure that before you push it down it's exactly in the right place. So you cut them to length. We'll just use a jigsaw. They don't recommend an angle grinder, but we'll show you that process in a moment. Tricky bits come when you're joining up against, like we have here, up against the ridge. So this has to be trimmed and shaped. So process is pretty much, we tape over with masking tape so we can mark the lines, and then you're using a metal bladed jigsaw. Just a steady hand and keeping it as calm as possible. The edge is nice and neat, and to be honest, even though obviously you haven't got a bit of paint on the side, it doesn't show very much, and it's aluminium, so it's not going to rust or corrode. So it looks pretty good. So there you can see there was a few attempts on getting the angle right so that it fitted up against the ridge. But as long as you go slow and steady with the jigsaw, lines come out nice and straight. Got the line on the masking tape to follow, so it works pretty well. This piece we're cutting here, we had to cut around the roof light on the roof and also the ridge. So this one took a bit of measuring and a bit of cutting around. As I say in the instructions for the product, they don't recommend using an angle grinder. We never did try, we just stuck with the jigsaw. We found it worked pretty well for us. And there you go, up in position, cut around the roof light and up against the ridge. And then we snap the last piece into place on the main roof. Got a raw edge there where we've cut the piece to size, and as you can tell, it doesn't really show up that it's a sort of grinning cut edge. And the finish overall is tidy. And then as we look from the balcony from below, once the render's onto the boxing, it's going to look proper smart. And it matches in with the grey of the windows really well. So down to the bottom. So we're doing exactly the same aluminium around the balcony area. So here slightly different. We've obviously we've got a cavity. We've got the wooden boxing up against the block work. We have to put some OSB in between to cover up the cavity that then gets screwed down. So the sections all go round. And then the whole lot's covered with the breathable membrane, trimmed to size, and then we can start putting the capping on top. So here's one of those T-pieces I spoke about. So we square it up and then get the gap right. Mark at the edges so that we know where the U-shaped joining pieces are going to go as a centre line for them, and then mark the furthest edge. These ends get spaced out and squared up correctly. And then screwed down into place. And then once all the brackets are down, it's just a simple job of snapping the covering piece over the top. So on this we have more cuts to do because the balcony didn't stick out the whole 3 meters. So these were nice straight cuts, made it a bit simpler. Basically this is the process, so we measure out and see roughly where you've got to mark. We're then using the wide masking tape to give us an area to mark our line on. And then once the line's marked, we'll start with the jigsaw. So we tended to do the 2 downward sides first. Made life slightly easier. And then once we cut those, we then cut over and across the top, starting the jigsaw at the angle and making sure the sole plate was resting against the aluminium, otherwise it shook like a good one. And to be honest, with the blade that we'd chosen, the edge was pretty good, no real sharp edges. I mean, you could run a file over it if you were worried about it, or if it was an edge that you were going to see or be close to. And then as long as you measured it right, it just snaps down into place. Here we've got an overhang because we're going to hide the rainwater pipe underneath the edge of the aluminium capping, so you can't see it. You may also notice as we put this piece down, we've got another strip of OSB to the sort of near edge there. This is for when we put the balustrading on top of the aluminium capping. We have to screw down into the timber below. So we're working on the fact that the screws or bolts are going to be pretty large going through. So what we didn't want to do was compress or dent the aluminium. So we put in some 9mm OSB in between, which takes up the gap between. And then we can pretty much screw it down anywhere. And we know we're going to get a decent fix in without upsetting the capping. So like I say, once you get going, progress is pretty swift. And pieces snot into place nicely. So move over to the tight area around by the roof light. Here we don't need the OSB underneath because we won't be having any balustrading. So it's just a matter of cutting and shaping and slotting down into place. So for every long piece we put 3, even though the length sort of change and we've got different ones. They come with the brackets, you get plenty. We ordered an extra sort of 3 or 4 because we thought we'd need them, but really could have got away without. And the quality of the product's really quite good. I think we had a small issue with one piece that was slightly damaged during transit, but it came relatively well packed. And the piece that was damaged, they changed over straight away and arrived in a couple of days. It was one of the corner pieces. So really very good. So as I said before, if you're interested, we'll put a link in the description to the website / company that we got it from. But as the last few pieces slot into place, I'll leave you some views of what we've been up to. And I thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again on the next one.